What's going on, America, and welcome to a special edition of the Dear America podcast. On this episode, I am joined by Tommy Vext, lead singer of Bad Wolves. Now, for those of you who may not know who that is, have you ever heard the song Zombie, Zombie? I can't do it like he does. But if you've heard that song before, you know that they are a very, very, very famous rock band. And we have some interesting conversations. And I enjoyed this episode because didn't agree with everything he said. Agreed with a good bit of what he said, but overall it was a fascinating conversation and solid dude, really good dude. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think we could probably have 2 or 3 more segments and hopefully he'll come back on, but we got to get into some sponsors. So let's do that. First, I got to talk about our friends over at Liberty University. We, Dear America, have teamed up officially with Liberty University to bring you the options that you need to finish your degree or send your kids to homeschool. Right now, the world is upside down, and now is the best time to homeschool your kids. Go to Liberty.Edu/DearAmerica right now and inquire about Liberty University or Liberty's homeschool online. By clicking the special link or by typing in the link, you can get your application fee absolutely waived. Go to Liberty.Edu/DearAmerica now. All right, and without further ado, it is my fantastic honor and just a really cool opportunity to introduce one of my favorite vocalists in the rock music genre right now, Mr. Tommy Vext, the lead singer of Bad Wolves. My friend, thank you so much for coming on Dear America. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm stoked.
Cool,
Things
man. All right, so let's get this out of the way first. All right. You have a majestic voice, all right, and let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. You've got Bad Wolves. Most of my followers, most of the people that listen to this show are pretty much all in the rock world, so I'm pretty sure that they're very familiar, at least with Zombie, right? Because Zombie is like the thing that started it all. Just really quick, and we've got a lot of things to talk about. I don't want this to be your normal interview. But just really quick, man, how did all that happen? How did you guys go from being just another band to bam, where you are now?
Well, it's an interesting story. At the time, I wasn't actively doing music professionally, so I had, I've been in bands for 20 years. A lot of people, like the underground extreme metal fans, know my old band, Divine Heresy. Now I filled in for a punk band who's I grew up listening to called Snot. Their singer had passed away 20 years ago, and I did their reunion tours. And then, I just kind of I took a break to focus on sobriety, and I wound up, spending years. I opened a nonprofit organization, and I did that for a little bit. Then I got a job running a men's sober rehab facility in Santa Monica.
Wow.
And I got my old boss discovered me because it was his facility and started training me to be a sober coach and a sober companion and a counselor. And I did that for about 4 years. And I worked with the Hollywood elite, a lot of celebrities, a lot of the 1%. It's a really weird kind of job, and right. I was good at it. And I think because I come from very humble beginnings, and I come from, South Brooklyn. I grew up on the street, and I have a pretty gnarly story. And I kind of used my experience to help these more kind of privileged people understand that if I can get sober, they could too. And they right. and it kind of takes the excuses away. So fast forward to 2017, and I was working a case. I got a call from the guys on Five Finger Death Punch. I'd known Ivan. I've known Ivan so long that we used to drink together.
Really?
I've been sober 11 years. Yeah, me and Ivan actually got into a couple of fights together in Hollywood when he first moved. No kidding. Yeah, there was people would start fights at bars, and we were the first 2 idiots to jump in. And 12 years later, they're giving me a call and they're like, hey man, and so, he asked me if I would go on tour with him and just hang out and just kind of just chill and, be a positive influence and support sobriety. And, at that time I was working on a studio project with John, my drummer, he's from Devil Driver. And I had opened up for him years before with Snot, and Doc from God Forbid, who Doc and I have known each other 20 years. And basically he sent me a bunch of songs, and I was doing a band and I didn't want to I was too busy.
Right.
But the songs were so cool that I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then I had, we made a record and we paid for it ourselves. And I wanted to do, Ivan and Zoltan from Five Finger helped us get a record deal, and Zoe managed us. He still manages us. And, I had to step in for Ivan for a little bit because he was really struggling. And for him, it was best for him that he did Inpatient to deal with his alcoholism. And I'm honestly, it's like such a different story, because we see all these celebrities getting pushed on stage or pushed in front of a camera and they don't get the help they need. And I think Ivan made a really smart decision, and he saved his own life.
Yeah.
And so I wound up for the rest of that tour. Then the band kind of got put onto their label, and I had recorded the cover of Zombie because I heard it in a coffee shop, and I was like, man, this song's heavy.
Yeah.
And it was around the time of the Vegas shooting had happened, and it was just like the message was very powerful. And then I started doing research about the song, and it's actually an anti-terrorism song.
Yeah.
So it's the song Dolores wrote was about the IRA bombing in Warrington, England, a factory bombing where two little boys were actually killed as collateral damage in this terrorist attack by the IRA. And we tracked the song, and the label liked it, and turns out the owner of my label used to manage the Cranberries.
Wow.
And the president of the English, the president of the UK office reached out to Dolores. We wanted her to just write something nice about it, so it wasn't like we were just doing this cover and we were like these chumps.
Yeah.
She fell in love with the version. She was like, I'm singing on it. I want to sing on it. And we said, yeah, obviously, and then she flew to London, and, as a lot of people know, we lost her on January 7th of 2018. And there was a huge, the bottom fell out. I was a huge Cranberries fan, and I was devastated. I had some weird feelings of guilt. It was a weird thing to process, and right. I was in a mind frame of like, well, if I never recorded this song, she never would have went to the hotel and she, this or the other. And we all had to process the experience. And, we talked to the label, and they said we should put this song out. And we, as a band, we didn't feel comfortable. And the decision, we came to a collective decision that we didn't want to make money. And, I basically talked to the label owner, and he agreed that we should donate all the proceeds to her family. So we put the song out, and we made a video, and it was a really beautiful experience, man. And it was like that day on set, it felt like she was with us. Wow. Especially when the actress Ava got dressed in the gold and like put on the whole thing, and there was a lot of crying all day.
Wow.
And I think it shows how much of that's the thing. It's like people, I've said this before, like people don't mourn the death of an artist because we knew them. We mourn their death because they helped us know a piece of ourselves. And I think that she was so honest in her catalog and of who she was and fearless. This small Irish girl from Limerick who was standing up to these terrorist things. Right. Who those people thought that they were doing the right thing because they felt that they were fighting against oppression. And, we're literally dealing with that now.
Yeah.
We're literally dealing with the it's so crazy how it's like it's the same old scene in 2018, and in that, you know, then it was 1916, and 2020, it's still happening, and there's people who are so delusional that they're willing to kill and destroy in order to feel some sense of restitution, because they've been kind of bamboozled.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a super powerful story. I didn't know all of that. Like, obviously I knew some of the connections there, but I had no idea about that. And I think that story actually tells a lot about you guys, honestly, and your character and your moral compass and things. And I appreciate you sharing that for the audience. I always, you know, we've had a lot of rock and roll people. Apparently rock and roll people like the show. And so we've had a lot of rock and roll guys. Ivan has been a fan of the show for a while. The Breaking Benjamin guys, things like that. And I really enjoy getting to hear, you know, the mindset behind what people were thinking when you know, and connecting it to these major songs that we've connected to. A good friend of mine said that music is so powerful because you will never connect to anything the way that you connected to music in those prime formative years. And that's why music becomes so powerful to so many people, is because it takes you to this place. It takes you to this time, whether you're dealing with sobriety or drug addiction or a messed up relationship, whatever it is, music becomes that thing to where, you know, I can listen to a certain song and bam, I'm in Iraq, you know, automatically right there. I mean, I know exactly where I was, what I was doing. And I've always been a major fan of music and of artists in particular. And I appreciate you saying and sharing with that. Here's the thing about home security companies. Most trap you with high prices, tricky contracts, and lousy customer support. So while there are a lot of options out there, there's only one no-brainer. Simply Safe is super easy, guys. Look, I'm an idiot. I'm not what you call a handy man, but it's super simple. You take it out of the box, you stick it to your doors. It's got a little alarm system that's in there, and it's all connected Bluetooth like electronically. It's super easy and convenient, and it keeps your home safe. Professional monitoring keeps watch day and night, ready to send police, fire, or medical professionals if there's an emergency. And there's no contract, no pushy sales guys, no hidden fees, no fine print. All this starts at $15 a month. I'm not the only one who thinks Simply Safe is great. U.S. News and World Report named it the best overall home security of 2020. Try Simply Safe today at simplysafe.com/DearAmerica. You get free shipping and a 60-day risk-free trial. There's nothing to lose. That's simplysafe.com/DearAmerica. I'd like to dig in a little bit. You said you're from Brooklyn originally. And yes, humble beginnings there. And the reason that I'd like the audience, if you're comfortable with it, to hear a little bit about that is because you have really stepped out in kind of uncharted territory. There's a lot of people that are in your position in the music industry that feel very much the same way that we feel. But for some reason, they choose not to speak on it, and you have kind of done the opposite of that. So before we get into that part, I'd love just to hear a little bit about, you know, Brooklyn and how Tommy Vext came to be.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, a lot of people know I have a twin brother. I was born in Greenpoint Hospital, which is no longer there, and what I know of my birth mother, she was a junkie. She abandoned my brother and I at the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, high. And then my parents, my father was a Vietnam vet, and my mom had quit a job doing accounting for some corporation on Wall Street, and she quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom. They were supposed to adopt one baby, and the adoption agency didn't want to separate us. So right. They took, and my dad raised a family of 5. When I was 4, they adopted my sister. You know, my dad raised a family of 5 on a janitor's salary, you know, and there was no, you know, we grew up was a predominantly white neighborhood that bordered on the projects. So there was like, the whole area had a very different mix, like cultural mix. So there was African American, and then within our neighborhood there was a lot of Irish and Italian, and it was kind of like mobstery.
Really?
Yeah, but in the 90s there was kind of this break, whereas like the 80s there was a definitive. I went to in kindergarten and preschool, and we had segregated lunch still.
Really?
And segregated lunch was under the guise of basically they separated us by who brought lunch to school. So if the working class white families could afford to send their kids to school with a sandwich, they would eat at a different in the auditorium, and the government hot food was for the low income African American kids who came to that school too. Wow. So it was and for me it was like a lot of kids were very confused. So they were, are you white or are you black? I'm like, I didn't even know, because my parents they don't see race.
Right. Well, I was going to ask, are your adoptive parents African American, or are they?
My adopted parents are white,
okay.
But we have, I grew up with black cousins and an Indian cousin, because my mother's aunts and uncles and stuff, they were Italian, and they adopted kids. Like
right.
It was just a thing. There were kids needed a home, and that's what was going on. So
yeah.
We had multicultural mixed family. My brother and I are black and white. My sister's Puerto Rican and white. My cousin Thomas was from India, and cousin Raymond and Michelle were black and Puerto Rican. And our parents were Irish, Italian.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, like Danish. My mother's half Danish, and and whatever. So within the family, wasn't irregular, but outside of that, it was strange for other kids to see. They didn't understand what it was. So that was kind of like my first introductory idea into race. So I really didn't. And I did, like, it's funny, in MarkerGate, that's what they're calling it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that here soon. Yeah.
I explained, I said some things on purpose to manipulate the liberal media that I deal with on a weekly basis. Like, I do interviews all the time with these publications, and I know how they behave. And so I gave them something they could try to, I put myself in front of a firing line for their egos, so they could try to, talk shit, saying that racism was manufactured and it wasn't real. It's not the case. I'm just smart enough to do what I got to do to get the point across. And 37 million views later.
Oh yeah. I think you got 16 million of those from us, because we posted you on our pages as well. So yeah.
You guys, Tito Ortiz, Jenna Jameson, and then like all the plethora of from David Harris Jr. and it just was
great
like,
people, man. Those guys are awesome.
Solid patriots, So anyway, I got my brother had mental illness problems, and he was getting institutionalized for extreme violence and torturing animals and setting fires and hurting my mother and my sister and me. It was so intense that it caused my father to relapse. My dad had been sober for 20 years, and he had gotten sober after Vietnam. And when my dad drank, it was like a whole other dude was there.
Yeah.
And my mom took my sister, and she moved to get away from my brother and me and my dad, and they left me with them. And, I went from being a straight A student in one of the highest classes to, selling drugs and being in a band and hanging out on the street corner and getting high. And my adolescence, there was so much violence in my house. It was much safer to be out with a bunch of other people in case anything happened. And, that's just how it was. And, we got our ass kicked by the cops. Sometimes the cops bring you home, and then your parents will beat the shit out of you after.
Yeah.
But it was like the premise was different because I feel like law enforcement they lived in the neighborhoods that they patrolled in Brooklyn. And so they knew you and you knew them. And it was like, it was more peace officers. I think after, from on the other side, what a lot of people have complained about so much is I think post 9/11, there was a more militarization and arming of law enforcement, which I think was necessary, but that seems to be the argument of liberals wanting to defund the police, which to me, if you grew up where I grew up, you never want to defund the police. Most people who are saying this don't know psychopaths, murderers, rapists. I grew up with people like this. A lot of people I grew up with are dead or in jail. And so people don't, sometimes if I say something political, I get these literally these little kids, these like liberal kids who are like, I'll kill you. And I'm like, dude, you're flying under a banner of like, oh, we got to stop racism. The only way to stop racism is to tag white people and then say white people can't talk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can you constitute anything that you're saying about abolishing racism, but using racist tactics to silence a race of people because of their skin? It's absurd.
It's insanity, and I'm glad that you've kind of swerved it this direction, because I think this really sets a precedent. I don't know how much you've listened to the show, but the audience knows a lot. This is a really cool starting point for us to go. I'm just about as white as it gets from Southern Mississippi. My upbringing, I ended up getting taken out of my home. My father had his run-ins with the law, drug problems, things like that. My mother had mental issues growing up. So I ended up being sent off with my grandparents, etc. I never went to college. The only way that I was going to get out of Mississippi was to join the military. That was it. And then by 19 years old, I'm in Iraq. And that was my privilege, so to speak, is getting out. So we could not have... Go ahead.
I do want to bring up I want to talk about this concept of what white privilege is.
Okay, please.
So there is no such thing as white privilege. And what the far left and the Black Lives Matter, not the movement, not the movement, the corporation.
Yes, exactly. There is a very big difference. Yes.
Marxist fundraising corporation that organizes militarized protests to raise money for the DNC. That Black Lives Matter. What they're trying to do with this terminology of white privilege is it's a form of suppression and silencing. Now, there is no such thing as white privilege. There are more poor white people in America than poor black people. Yeah. And the reality is anyone in power, if all the poor people realize they have more in common with each other than they do with their slave masters, because to a degree, we are free in this country, yet we are all slaves. And anyone living in a democratic city or state is learning that as they continuously break the Constitution and strip our freedoms under the guise of a health crisis that doesn't exist.
Very true.
Period. White privilege is a phenomenon that liberals and communists and Marxists are using to silence any patriot who stands up for the Constitution. Any patriot, any person who questions the narrative, any person who contests, and even I have gone through this. Now, these people are out here screaming Black Lives Matter. I'm black. And when I exposed in a diagram with my friend's kids' markers what could potentially be happening, I didn't know. This was all just research and conspiracy theory, and I just made a video of it. I lost a $250,000 book deal.
Wow.
I lost a $30,000 a year speaker and microphone endorsement by JBL and AKG terminated my contract. I was told by the American Broadcast Association, people from there, And Spotify and Apple contacted the owner of my label and said that if I don't take the video down, I'll be blacklisted for the rest of my career. And then I couldn't even make the decision to take the video down because Facebook and Instagram did it for me.
Wow. See, now that's crazy. Now, see, that's the stuff that people don't understand. When people take a stand for what they believe to be right and they want to call out what they're seeing, how can people talk about that there's privilege in certain areas when one side can say whatever they want, no matter what it is? They can say whatever. The NFL just comes out yesterday saying that they're going to play the Black national anthem before the national anthem on every game of week 1. If the right had come out and said, you know what I think would be a good idea for us to play the white national anthem first, the entire world would have burned down. If you had come out and said that Black Lives Matter is the greatest thing, you probably would have gotten $1 million contract from somebody.
Yeah, but the thing is that there's a narrative, and also every major corporation is financially invested in dethroning Trump.
Yep.
They want Trump out. And I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I used to be a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat anymore. I don't believe the Democratic Party represents democracy.
Yeah.
I think the new Millennium Democratic Party is a veil of communism under another curtain of socialism.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And like, I have a friend who's like really into Marxism, and he's like thinks this is great, and I'm like, all right, cool. I because I respect the Constitution, I think everyone has a right to believe whatever they believe and say whatever they want to say. But if I say something that's not in line with, your racial, gender identity or politics, whatever, like, I'm the Antichrist. Like, they don't want anyone, like, God forbid, a black person doesn't believe the shit that he's being fed.
Yeah.
They're feeding us this bull. And if you statistically look, I'm going to be real with you. Like, should George Floyd have been murdered? No.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah. I would say 98% of the world.
Should.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead. Yeah.
Nobody said that he should have been killed. And the police were arrested. Their badges were taken away. But we rioted before there was a verdict. And why did we riot? Why was it orchestrated and executed? Because it was a fundraising plot for the DNC, who was running out of money, allegedly.
Yeah. It makes sense. My video talking about the very thing, the Act Blue, the service that's running when you donate to Black Lives Matter, Facebook labeled me as false for that video, which it is in the bylaws of Act Blue that it says any unclaimed money, which unclaimed money in charity can be literally anything.
But go ahead. You should know, they're not a 501c3.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter is not. You're right. Exactly. Yeah, that's why they use Act Blue.
I had one. I had a nonprofit organization. They are not a 501c3. They're a corporation with no address.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're using a 501c3 that's owned and controlled by the DNC, because that's the whole purpose of Act Blue, is to gain money for the Democratic Party to raise their money through, which is money laundering, by the way. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to have a for-profit corporation business collect your donations through a 501c3 and then not have to pay taxes on it.
But that's what communism is. Communism is when corporation and government have no separation.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't understand the implications of that. And, it's just like, we can talk all day about that and that, and it's just like, people are like, you didn't do this. Did you march? I'm like, no, you know what I did? I rounded up like 15 or 16 dudes with guns and I hung out at the marches in case it popped off.
Yeah. And you guys also went around and cleaned up afterwards too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I spent hours and hours I bought bags and shovels and brooms and cleaned up the mess.
Yeah.
The most embarrassed I've ever been to be an American was cleaning up those stores. I was ashamed.
Yeah.
Like, God, this is like, it's all coming out, And so, I get this is how I feel about things. And, the thing is that if you talk about this, so when earlier you were saying a lot of people are not saying anything, they're not allowed.
Yeah.
So I got an alphabetical order list of celebrities of the highest caliber who reached out to me and said thank you.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. All the time. But
they know if they speak up, they're over. They're canceled. And for whatever reason, whether they buy Trump as racist or they buy Trump as a hateful bigot or they just hate him or whatever, they're on that side, and they're on that side of history. And everyone who's in the middle, we have to suffer. If everybody suffers, I mean, dude, I just left the gym and I refuse to wear a mask.
Yeah.
I go to the Mecca and I'm like, I have asthma. I have a legal document. I wear one of these and I have emphysema, and I'm like, I'm not wearing a mask. And they're like, well, will you call the cops? I'm like, they defunded the police. Call the cops. I'm like, who are you going to call? Yeah. I volunteer at Santa Monica Police Department and the Narcotics Division, going to high schools, teaching kids anti-drug and alcohol policy. Come call them. I'm like, I wonder if it's working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's Friday. Like, I'm like, go, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a cameraman, and I'm going to go to the gym and work out. And if they have to call the police, I mean, the thing is, the gym is on our side. They're like, we need to expose this. And even you can't even sue the gym because you'll be suing the city.
Yeah.
You'll sue the city health department. And the funny thing is that you walk outside the gym and there are 70 homeless drug addicts living on the street in front of the gym, all around the blocks. And a lot of them are veterans, and they're suffering from mental health. They're suffering from addiction. They've been abandoned and abused by the system.
Yeah. And
the health department is trying to say that tax-paying citizens who are it's gold. These are the most elite athletes in the world at this gym, the most healthiest people in the world. And you're saying we are the ones at risk to spread COVID-19. First of all, every single person who marched for Black Lives Matter, shame on you. Shame on you. Not because you stood up for what's right, because you completely ignored the fact that we're in some pandemic. Yeah. And now we have another spike, and your selfishness and your inability to wait for a verdict.
Yep.
And your complete troglodytic mind, your monkey mind, your caveman mind, influenced by the media, influenced by your leaders, your side, sent you out to put your own lives at risk and everyone else's, and then continue to further destroy the economy, initializing another shutdown.
Yeah, 17 states already are trying to shut things or have already shut things back down. Yeah, I completely agree. All right, record numbers of people are buying guns and ammunition for the first time. If you are one of them, please be safe, and please holster that new handgun in a We the People holster. Starting at just $39, We the People holsters are custom designed to fit your firearm perfectly and made right here in America. They have thousands of options to choose from, plus an amazing selection of printed holsters. Their proprietary clip design allows for you to easily adjust both the cant and right of your holster and will fit comfortably and securely at all times. Go to wethepeopleholsters.com/Graham to get yours. Every holster ships free and comes with a lifetime guarantee. Get an additional $10 off with the offer code GRAHAM. Satisfaction is guaranteed. If it's not perfect, send it back for a total refund. That's wethepeopleholsters.com/Graham. wethepeopleholsters.com/Graham. Offer code Graham. The thing that pisses me off the most is the media narratives around it, though. Still to this day, they are stating and they are showing that there is absolutely nothing, no evidence of any kind to show that all of the riots led to any spike of COVID-19. But yet the opening of gyms and businesses did. And still to this day, that's what they're sticking with.
So people need to pay attention to this. The reason why they're reserving the right to have another riot. And so what you're going to see is, well, let's look at what's already happened. They defunded the police in Democratic cities, right?
Yep.
But what police, who did they defund in LA? Do you know? Well, it's interesting. They didn't defund the beat cops or the traffic ticket department or the meter maids. They defunded the sex trafficking.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you're right. Yes, I did know that. Yes.
So they defunded the Parks Department, Parks and Rec, and they defunded the SBU. So if you get raped, sorry.
Huh.
If your kid goes missing, we'll send a squad car out at some point. And this is very interesting for Los Angeles County. Ghislaine Maxwell was apprehended this week.
Yeah. Yep.
She has the flight log of the people who visited Epstein's Island are among the Hollywood elite.
Yeah.
As well as some politicians.
Yeah.
So again, what do we know about BLM? They are a militarized Marxist company.
Yep.
Their job is to rally people under a guise of racial inequality to distract anyone from finding out what's going on. And so what did they do? They successfully caused enough drama. They were going to defund the police anyway, but the Black Lives Matter is the show for everyone to put the dots together. They're leading us on. It's like a carrot over a donkey. You can't just defund the police. You need all this stuff to happen.
Yeah.
But why would you defund the child sex trafficking department? Those people have never shot a black man in their life. They've never killed an African-American person ever. They go after pedophiles.
Yeah.
So why would you defund them? Those are the least danger to the community if you consider law enforcement to be a danger to your community, okay? And let me tell you something else. Pedophiles don't have a racial preference.
Yeah.
So your kids, your children's black lives, do they matter? Because in Wisconsin last week, what happened? A little girl was kidnapped and her parents found her iPhone through Find My iPhone, and the neighbors broke into the man's house, rescued all the girls. Multiple children were being held captive in a dungeon in this house in the hood, and they burned it to the ground. It wasn't on the news, but it was all over social media. Because witnesses were filming the whole thing.
Yeah. We had Yaku Buyans on the show a couple months ago. I don't know if you know who that is. He runs, he does exactly what you're saying right now. He is one of the guys that they hunt these people and they go in there kicking in doors with AR-15s and they go, put a knee, not metaphorically, they literally go put a knee on these guys' necks that are doing these sex trafficking, child raping, things like this. And he was telling me that in 2020, believe it or not, the most at-risk kids for child trafficking, sex trafficking, or rape are actually two-parent homed children in 2020 because of social media and because of the fact that parents are wanting to not be parents anymore. They're wanting to be friends and they're just letting their kids go do whatever they want to do. And they're 13 years old, so they might as well be grown. So sure, you can go here and you can do this and you can do that. And it is absolutely, I get like I have a really, really intense mental stomach connection and it makes me physically sick, like to think about it. Like it truly does. I've got 3 children and it makes me sick.
Are you familiar with Alicia's Law?
I am not. Educate me.
So Alicia Kozak was a 13-year-old girl. She's now an advocate and a speaker and an educator. She was the same. She was at 13. She was lured from the internet to meet another kid who turned out to be a 35-year-old pedophile that locked her in a dungeon. And she was recovered, and she spent years and years of her life, putting the pieces back together and speaking out. I actually just put her in touch with Laura Burke, who used to work in the Dallas traffic union.
I know Laura. Good people. Good people.
Yeah. So, we're all working to kind of get her voice out there more, because the value, the educational value of Alicia's experience is she's a survivor. And the problem is, like what you said, parents don't realize that, it's not about going to school and going to the park so much as now, these online predators, they pretend to be kids. They make catfish profiles and they get other kids to meet up with them to be friends.
Yeah.
And when they're alone, they hijack them.
Yeah.
Over 800,000 children go missing in America every year. If you're not recovered within 24 hours, I think there's an 80% chance that they'll never find you.
It's crazy.
And if 800,000 kids got COVID-19, we'd all be locked in our houses for the next 10 years willingly, and I would too.
Yeah.
But there's no attention being brought to this. The other thing that people don't realize is statistically, during the Obama administration, the average sex trafficking and pedophile arrests ranged from 300 people a year to 1,200.
Yeah.
In 2020, already over 10,525 pedophiles and sex offenders have been apprehended, and we're not even halfway through the year.
Yeah.
So there is definitely something greater going on that we don't understand. None of us know. I don't know. But something's going on. There is a criminal enterprise, and it's been, my contacts have explained to me that this has a lot to do with, during the war on drugs, it became more lucrative to traffic people than it is to sell drugs.
Well, that's what Yaku was saying. He was saying that a household with 4 kids, that's $1 million a year business. That's what he was saying. It's $250,000 a kid, and it's crazy.
After they're done abusing the children, there's a network that harvests the organs and parts.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
And this is like, so, and a lot of people don't, it's so hard to, I have to be careful about what I say, but, people who are freaking out about all the people, the immigrants from Mexico who were detained, and they separated them from their kids, and it was this big thing all over the news.
Yeah.
The way that it has been explained to me is that those people, those were not their kids.
No. Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely not.
That's
proven. That's a proven thing. Yeah. Those kids had no idea who those people were.
Yeah. And so the adults, the news made this whole thing like, oh, Trump is racist and he's separating all these illegal immigrants from their children. No, they're not. They're separating them to make sure whose parent is who and who's being trafficked, and send them back to their families. But you will never see that on the news, because the news is invested in getting and making him look a certain way, which you have to wonder why. And when you start to look into it further, you start realizing, I talked about it in the Marker video, there's a lot of this, trillions and trillions of dollars have been lost as a result of these tariffs put on other countries who are importing goods that are extracting from the American economy.
Yep.
So these massive companies are paying higher prices for imported goods from China because the taxes have to go back to America, which helps fix our economy and get us out of the debt with that nation, which there's been an extraction of our economy since probably, I don't know, the late 90s or early 2000s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, even back in the early 90s, Donald Trump was talking about the fact that we need to pay attention to what's going on with China and how that we're becoming less and less dependent on ourselves, and we're putting everything towards China. Donald Trump is, and I've had the opportunity to meet the guy a couple times. Donald Trump is not perfect. Okay, he's not. No one is. And that's a problem that I think we have in society in general right now, Tommy. And I'd love your opinion on this. This isn't like big corporate conspiracy things, but this is like on the small level that I think is leading to a lot of this right now. People think that people have to be perfect or they're bad people. And it's almost like in 2020, we're finding out that, the founding fathers that wrote the Constitution, they had slaves. They hadn't abolished slavery yet. And so now we have to get rid of that. They're finding out that
it's a project. Listen, let me just cut through the bullshit for the psychological level. This whole, this reaction is a projection of people's own shame. Now, I'm going to be real with you. If everybody put all their problems in the middle of a room for the whole world to see, we would all take them back and put them in our pockets. The witch hunt, if you've ever been to Salem, Massachusetts, the way that they describe how the witch hunt happens is that there is a religious persecution after the accusation is made that someone is a witch, and other people who are guilty of being imperfect Christians or just imperfect humans need somebody to take the fall.
Yeah.
So they witch hunted, and they burned these women, they drowned them. And if they put women in a wood box and put them in the river, and if they didn't drown, they were definitely a witch, and then they would burn them. And if they died, they would send your family a sorry note.
Yeah.
It's like, she was a witch.
What the crap is that? Yeah, it's terrible.
But in order to understand the masterminds of this psychology of this, we're in a silent war. It's known. Like the Pentagon knows it, the FBI knows that we are in a silent war. There is a silent war for power and control over this country. And it's just where the citizens are going to suffer. We're going to, and again, so my predictions are there's going to be a new virus. It's probably going to be more serious. And they're going to, be like, oh, well, people didn't do this. And now it's never going to be the truth. Even the idea that COVID-19 could have been released as a viral weapon, as a biological warfare tactic on the American people and on the global community, you can't even talk about that. That's insane, right? But What do we know about what happened when COVID hit? When we went into lockdown, it was the biggest redistribution of wealth in global history since the Great Depression. So the markets, if you follow the stock market, it went down and it jumped right back up because 80% of the stock market shareholders are the 1%.
Yeah.
Amazon made money and AT&T and everything, streaming services, Netflix, the entertainment industry, we didn't get to not pay rent. We didn't get free food.
Yeah.
Didn't get to work and have the economy putting money back into us. And it's going to run out. The unemployment's going to run out. There's not going to be any more stimulus checks.
Yeah. And $1,200 after 3 months does what?
Yeah, well, listen, people don't realize you can't even afford to buy. Like my old apartment in Santa Monica was $4,100 a month for a 1-bedroom that I split with my ex-girlfriend. That's the white privilege.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sick. Like that's what you like, and it's insanity.
Texas, same way. When we were living in Texas, our house that we were at was $4,000, $4,000 a month, just for the house. That's not utilities. That's not cable. That's not food. That's not nothing. $4,000.
I hear, but so it goes to show you the what you can be psychologically trained as acceptability. Like $4,000 for a house is like, man, I got to move there. I've been instructed to move out of LA. There's going to be serious problems in major Democratic cities. Serious, talking about. And when I say serious, I mean firefights, like gunfire in the street. All these fireworks that are happening. I posted on Facebook last week. I was like, is anybody else noticing all these fireworks for the past month? It's been happening for a month.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with 4th of July. Fireworks are illegal. I've been in California 14 years. I've never heard a goddamn firework in my entire life other than the big fireworks spectacular that they have. That's now banned.
Yeah.
Right? So what does that do? What does it do? Well, it psychologically keeps you awake, keeps you anxious, keeps you on your toes, but it also desensitizes you over time to the sound of gunfire. They're also, so this is what, and again, it sounds crazy. If someone tells me something and I don't believe them and then it happens once, I'm like, okay, this guy might know what he's talking about. If they tell me twice and it happens, I'm like, by the fourth or fifth time, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, obviously something I don't know. So, this is and it's like, I'm not trying to freak people out, but if you're not in a Second Amendment state or city, like, you don't know what's coming.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Who are like living in the woods, like shooting targets, like they think they're going to change the world.
Yep.
They're not on their medication and their mummies and daddies and not here to wipe their little tushies and like they think that they play too many video games and they're indoctrinated into Marxism and they think they're going to be the revolution.
Tommy, I have this conversation with people all over the country. Everywhere, every time I go to these D1 just socialistic, indoctrinated campuses across the country, every time my major thing that I'm talking about to them is I'm talking about the Second Amendment and the importance of the Second Amendment. And the number one de facto thing that everybody says when I say, the Second Amendment's the most important one. And this is why I believe that. I believe the Second Amendment is the most important because the First Amendment is amazing and it's great. But what happens when the government says you can't do that anymore? They're already doing it in certain places. You can't say certain words, can't call people certain things. If you do, there's fines. You go to jail.
Let me explain to you the severity of California. You're not allowed to sing in church.
Not allowed to sing in...
This is a real governor mandate. Singing in church is
wait, hold on. So you mean like actual church, like you're at church?
Yes. So so let's just go.
What's the thought behind that?
Well, let's just talk about this. Let's talk about some weird things.
Okay.
Defund the police to save the African American community from police brutality, but you don't actually defund or minimize the patrol officers. You change them to unarmed peace officers. Good luck with that.
Oh my gosh.
Who do you defund? You defund the sex trafficking unit and the sex crimes victims unit. Okay, that's weird. Black Lives Matter. Take down statues. Statues are racist. Oh, take them down. We take them down. We're all sitting here like, what is going on? Take down the statues. We got to take them down. We got to get rid of Jesus. Oh, yeah. Wait. What does Jesus have to do with anything? Well, Jesus is racist because he looks like he's white, and that's not what Jesus really looked like. I'm like, well, there's 42 different versions of Jesus throughout the course of history, and Jesus is also black. He's Chinese. He's Japanese. He's Indian. Every artist who depicted Christ thousands or thousands of years ago. But you want to get rid of the statues of Jesus, and you don't want singing in church. And now there's all this, and now it's all coming out. There's been 10,000 sex trafficking, pedophile ring arrests. And so you can't say that that's not happening. We know that 800,000 kids go missing in the United States every year. We know that they're being funneled from across the border because it's easier to make kids disappear as organ donors if they don't have any birth certificate. And there's all these Hollywood whistleblowers who are coming forward and then being silenced, talking about Luciferian rituals. And this is the tinfoil hat moment where people if you asked me this a month ago, I'd be like, that is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Until but 2 months before that, if you told me, oh, well, they're going to release this virus so they can crash the American dollar and basically defraud the dollar and force everyone into cryptocurrency and have one world globalized government, I'd be like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. So 2020, month to month, is just the craziest thing I've ever heard coming true. Yeah. And then another crazy thing that I've never heard coming true. And I'm like, okay, That's really weird. And maybe I'm like nuts, but I would much rather be wrong. Like, I desperately want to be wrong. I don't want to be right. I'm not out here saying this like I know. I'm saying, yo, this is crazy. And the more that I look into things and the more people who reach out to me, the more information I get. And I'm like, yo, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
Why do you want? Go ahead.
I was just saying, we say over here, it's like every month is like the next level of Jumanji over here. Like something new and horrible is coming. I just got a notification, by the way, odd push in here. You guys just published a new post on your Patreon account. We are a Bad Wolves Patreon subscriber over here, very much. So anyway, that was random. Let me ask you something though.
That's a whole other thing. Everybody's mad because they got to pay for the cover album. They got to stream it. God
forbid people actually have to help you like pay your bills. But either way, let me ask you something societal for a minute. Let's tear down all this. Let's leave the media out of it for a minute. Let's leave all this stuff. Let's leave just even me and you sitting here talking right now, just having a conversation. Two completely different people from completely different backgrounds. We're actually a lot similar in a lot of ways. I got an inhaler right here. I got asthma myself. I volunteer with, there it is. I volunteer with the police department, the sheriff's department here, which I must say that we arrest 10-1 white people, but, people don't want to hear that. Anyway, to me, one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest things that bother me the most in 2020, and this is what I like to believe that I try to fight against the most, is the fact that if me and you dug far enough, I would venture to say we probably would agree on maybe 75% of things, maybe, when it's all said and done. But you're never going to agree 100% with everybody about everything. And today, it seems like if we disagree on anything, we have to be these mortal enemies. We're immediately stupid or racist or bigots or whatever. It seems like we just cannot agree to disagree on certain things and just be as people.
It's because of a lack of humility. And the way that the human ego works is that the ego is basically the worst thing for us, right? We need the ego because it's the part of us that kicks in to survive, but we're not living, there's a really good book called Sapien that you should check out. I'll send you a link.
Yeah.
But I read stuff like that. I read Eckhart Tolle, and I understand the ego it believes that we're separate. And so people who are proven, if you're dependent, if your whole idea of yourself is dependent on your ego, if someone proves you wrong, or if you're wrong, your ego dies. So it has to die. So the ego will fight online. It will fight, it'll fight and fight and fight because it needs to be right. See, with me, I practice because I do have an ego and I am successful and I'm talented. And I have a lot of attributes, but I have a lot of shortcomings. I have to keep my ego in check. So part of my recovery is turning my life over and my will to something greater. Do I understand what that is? Not necessarily, but I've had a near-death experience. I died. I went to another place. I have had the experience of returning from understanding that this isn't it, and that the ego is just here. It's just an evolutionary part of us to drive us to stay alive, but we're not constantly in threat of being destroyed. So as we become more sophisticated in society, and as we become more sophisticated as we evolve as animals, the ego becomes less and less valuable. So attaching itself to politics or attaching itself to identity politics, race, religion, whatever is the new form of it being allowed to stay alive. Because the reality is that if all of us realize that we're all part of the same greater thing, not the meaning of life, but the nature of life, the existence that it is.
Right.
I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I can think.
Yeah.
And so there would be no ability to be at combat over a series of beliefs or disbeliefs. So with me, I'm in a band with a guitar player. My guitar player he would jump on a grenade if someone threw it at Hillary Clinton. And but that's his gig. And he's a smart person, and he's a very talented person.
Yeah.
And those are his beliefs.
Yeah.
So I have no right to tell him how he should think or how he should feel. Right. And I won't silence him.
Yeah.
And I won't downplay, and nothing anyone can say will make me hate this man, because he is a good and decent man. And we've been friends for 20 years. We don't have to agree.
Yeah.
We don't have to.
No, that's powerful, man. I mean, that's the truth. I agree with that completely. I think that what you just said is something that America or the world just needs to pay attention to. I would like to believe that belief-wise, basic beliefs of what makes Graham have been pretty consistent my entire life. But you would be amazed by the people that I grew up with, that we were brothers or sisters or whatever for 20 years, that now all of a sudden it's like they can't even believe the kind of person that I am, and they've completely just disowned. I'm the same guy that I was 20 years ago.
Well, it's like, if you are not, it's almost like being pro Thanos in Endgame. So like, if you are not 100% opposed to Trump, then you are pro annihilation. And so the left have done, I tip my hat to them. What a magnificent psychological manipulation of a mass of people through every tributary and every possible platform of influence to create a boogeyman out of somebody who is uncouth, unprofessional, arrogant, narcissistic. Sure.
Yeah, sure.
But somebody who doesn't want to see the totalitarian tiptoe fulfill its prophecy.
Yeah.
And so
I agree, man. I agree. I think
what a job they've done.
Yeah, no. I mean, you got to tip your hat.
And it's funny because they still can't get everybody, because there are just some people who are just like,
yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah,
people who have emotional and spiritual intuition really struggle to be like, a dictator never shows up as a dictator.
Correct.
The dictator, like Lucifer, will, like, the Antichrist shows up as Christ.
Yeah, everybody loves him, and then it turns really bad really quick. Yeah, exactly. I've had that same argument a lot with people as well. Look, man, we are getting close to the end of this show here, man. What an interesting guy you are. Like I said, I had a lot of respect for you musically. I had a lot of respect for you when you started stating what you believe. But, man, I really enjoyed just hearing, how your mind works and what you think and your experiences. I'd love to have a part 2 or probably part 3. There's probably a lot of things that we could talk about. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us. What is next for you guys with all this COVID-19 stuff going on? I mean, how can people support you and Bad Wolves and what you guys are doing?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and for everyone who supports free speech, no matter what it looks like, whether it is your politics or not, thank you for supporting freedom of speech. If you want to support Bad Wolves music, we have a Patreon. You can follow me at Tommy Vext on Instagram. That's where most of the information where I post about these topics is. There's some on Facebook, but there's I don't know if you're aware of troll farms. There are political-based troll farms that flag anyone talking against the status quo, and they will their followers with arguments, and they're machines. They're not real people. So it confuses people. So I don't really post on Facebook too much. And then, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/badwolves. It's $10 a month. There's already 15 songs streaming currently, live streams. Everybody goes on. The guys do guitar lessons, or, we're doing we do challenges. John, he tried to eat the entire menu of McDonald's and got sick.
Oh my gosh. That sounds like you'd get sick.
And, everybody who's a part of the Patreon gets is going to be getting vouchers for a free meet and greet when we start touring again, which is, so it's like a club. It's like a fan club.
Cool.
And, we have Sober just came out at number one. We had 2 weeks at number one. So that's our 5th number one single. We got a merch store, but it's like, I'm not really good at selling things because I don't care. I also I have 10 jobs.
Yeah. Well, I am. So everybody needs to go and support you guys. Go to Patreon. I pay the $10 for the premium thing, 'cause I love the covers, man. I really love the reimagining of the songs. I'm really hooked on Last Resort, the way that you guys did Last Resort, and I'm hooked on Cry Me a River right this second. I really like that. Oh, and Hollywood is Bleeding. That's really good too. So go support these guys. Go to Patreon. Follow Tommy Vext. Are you with First Form, or do you just like First Form?
I am officially I like them, and then I basically joined.
Okay, good. So Andy and Sal and all those guys.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Because I was going to hook you up if you weren't.
Me and Andy talk every night about this. Researching, yo, did you see this? Did you see that?
Yeah. He'll write me when he's really irritated about things, and so. All right, man. Well, look. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I appreciate just your story, where you've come from, your sobriety, man. All of that stuff is amazing. A lot of people saw a very rare post from me the other day that I was dealing with something mentally, and you were one of the few people to reach out. And me and you just recently kind of got connected with each other. And I really appreciate that because it shows what kind of person you are. And so I'd love to have you back on the show. If you ever get to the East Coast, let us know, and we'll show you around South Carolina a little bit and, take you out on the boat.
I'm playing a corporate party in August in Orlando. So
okay. Yeah, man.
Close.
Just let me know, man. Just and we'll figure it out. And when you do start touring again, I'm there. So that's Thanks for coming on, man.
We'll have to do a live broadcast from backstage.
Yes, definitely going to happen. And we'll get the Facebook mob supporting you guys too, and we'll make some magic happen.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, brother. All right, man. Well, you be blessed. All right. Have a good day. Okay.
You too. Take care, man.
All right, man. Later. All right, so that's the end of my interview with Tommy Vext. I hope you guys enjoyed it like I did. As I said, didn't agree with everything he said, agreed with a good bit of what he said, but overall, solid dude. I really enjoyed the conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know him a little better. I like these kind of episodes. I like being able to just talk to people. But if you're listening to this, that means that tomorrow, my book, America 316, goes live. I cannot believe that it is finally here. So you have one more day to get in on pre-order, and you can go right now to America316.com, and with the offer code audio50, if you buy the hard book cover, you can get the audio book half off. So go to America316.com right now and type the code audio50, get the hardcover, and then get the audiobook 50% off. That's it. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. As always, I'm Graham Allen, and we'll see you again next time.